Hello lovely people, it is well overdue time for a book haul.
Dooby 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 doo. Dooby 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 Sophie Vlogs.
So I think I've called this something like a Christmas book haul, but I should specify these are actually just books that have entered my life since October onwards, kind of. But I will kick things off with the books that I got given for Christmas. I'm not going to do any preamble, we're just going into it. There are quite a lot of books to talk about. So my delightful partner really knocked it out of the park. The first book he bought me is Entangled Life, How Fungi Make Our Worlds, Change Our Minds and Shape Our Futures by Merlin Sheldrake. I cannot tell you how excited I am for this book. I want to read all about mushrooms. I want to understand mycelial networks. I'm so excited. And I've heard such good things about this from all of the corners of the non-fiction reading booktube, so this is extremely exciting to me. He also got me Build Your House Around My Body by Violet Kupersmith. This is, to my understanding, drawing on Vietnamese history and folklore to tell a potentially slightly dark tale. This has two narratives. One of them is set in 1986, and we follow the teenage daughter of a wealthy Vietnamese family who gets lost in an abandoned rubber plantation and is forever changed. And then, 25 years later, a young, unhappy Vietnamese-American woman vanishes from her new home in Saigon without a trace. There is some sort of bond or link between these women. I'm expecting this to get a little bit dark, maybe a little bit creepy, I don't know, but I'm extremely intrigued. I love this cover so much. I think it is like haunting and also beautiful, so gonna explore for sure. And then he also got me Ovid's Heroides, which technically I have read some of before because I studied some of these when I was at uni, but I didn't read it all the way through at the time, and I've really wanted to. So these are people from mythology writing letters to other people from mythology. So like Paris to Helen, Helen to Paris, stuff like this. And I'm really interested in reading this with fresh eyes because some of these feel quite like giving voice to women in mythology who maybe previously didn't have voices, that kind of thing. The deciding factor in me requesting this was Pandora's Jar by Natalie Haynes. She does talk about Ovid's Heroides in it, and it reminded me that I have always wanted to read it from start to finish, so I'm really looking forward to dipping my toe back into some mythology here. My lovely friend Mark bought me this gorgeous edition of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. This is the 200th anniversary edition. It has some exceedingly creepy illustrations in it, and also some very cool details, like this, which folds out to complete, and all this kind of thing. I really like Frankenstein. Me and Mark did a whole podcast on Frankenstein, which I will link down below if you fancy giving that a listen, and it's really exciting to have like special editions of books that I know I like. So thank you very much, Mark. He also got me this one-shot comic, which is Batman Secret Files, The Gardener, because Christian Ward is an artist who I adore. He does all of these beautiful, like, psychedelic style things. Like, I love how his artwork like flows, and even when there are panels, there's a feel something very like organic about the way that he arranges pages, and I just think his artwork is amazing. And I also really like Poison Ivy, so I'm excited to read this. I don't really know what it's about other than Poison Ivy, but we'll find out. Speaking of comics, my dad did his traditional comic buying for Christmas. So I've got Slaine, Lord of Misrule by Pat Mills, Clint Langley, Greg Staples and Jim Murray. Slaine is a figure from the 2000 AD comics, which is like a British comic that has lots of different storylines in it each issue. Slaine is like based on Irish mythology, except he gets reborn a lot in other times as like the horned god and that kind of thing. So this is Slaine but set in the Norman era, taking some heavy liberty with history, but it's always very gory and violent and a little bit grotesque, but it's always an interesting read. And then he also bought me volume 2 of The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, because he bought me volume 1 last year for Christmas, or for my birthday, can't remember. So this is a very classic Alan Moore comic, which I am looking forward to exploring further, because before this, all of my knowledge was just that film that a lot of people don't really like. I will also briefly mention some cookbooks that I got given. This is Bitter Honey, Recipes and Stories from the Island of Sardinia by Letitia Clark. This is potentially one of the physically most beautiful recipe books I own. I think it is just absolutely stunning, and also has some really interesting writings about Sardinia as well as recipes. I have actually talked about this in my Christmas reading wrap-up, which has either gone live before this or after this. You'll find out soon. And then also Bazaar, Vibrant Vegetarian Recipes by Sabrina Ghayour, because I'm vegetarian, in case you didn't know, and it is so lovely to have a whole cookbook that I can cook from, and as you can see, I've bookmarked all the recipes I want to make. I'm going to have a great time in 2022. So, those are all my little Christmassy books. I thought I would briefly talk about 2 other special occasion books, and then I will dive into a themed thing. So it was mine and my partner's 6-year anniversary in November. Keeping with the classical theme, he got me Helen of Troy, Goddess Princess Whore by Bettany Hughes. I adore this edition. It is the first edition hardback. It is stunning. This is another book that I have technically read some of because I did a whole module on Helen when I was at university, and it was one of my favourites. And again, I really craved reading this book from start to finish, so he extremely kindly gifted it to me. And it's really exploring Helen through history and through writing and that kind of thing. So, and it's kind of challenging these concepts we have of her as like goddess, princess, whore. And Helen is just a figure that I have so many strong feelings about, so I'm really excited to explore her here. And then the exceedingly lovely Bryony got me a belated birthday present that is Iron Widow by Xiran J. Zhao, which I know a lot of people on BookTube have been really enjoying. I know that this is a like a reimagining of Wu Zhao and her reign, but also science fiction, and I think it has like a polyamorous relationship in it. I don't know much more than that because that was enough to sell me, and I know that Bryony really loved this book, so I'm extremely excited to dive in. Thank you so much, Bryony. Very, very kind of you. The aforementioned themed section is that I visited the Book Barn Kilo sale again. I have talked about this before, but at the time that I previously talked about it, it was a twice-yearly thing. It is now a monthly thing. On the first Sunday of every month, the Book Barn, which is a giant barn full of books, puts out boxes of stock that they haven't gone through, and you pay by weight instead of number of books. And I got some real beauties. And I'm just gonna kick it off with my absolute favourite find. Folio Society edition of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Silmarillion, and look at this. It's such good condition as well. It's so beautiful. I'm just trying to find you one of the, like they all begin with this lovely header. There are some stunning illustrations in this. There's like a map. My partner saw this and he handed it to me, and I was like, angel choir singing. Technically I do have a small little version of the Silmarillion because I was planning to read it in 2022 after I finished my Lord of the Rings reread. I'm just going to keep both. I just think this is stunning. I'm really excited to read this. I am in a real like Tolkien enthusiasm moment at the moment, and when I paid for the book, the guy was like, I can't believe I missed this. I also got another Folio Society book, and that is Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. I love Pride and Prejudice. It's one of my favourite books. I only have it on my Kindle. I don't actually own a copy of it until now because I've been waiting to buy myself a really nice copy, and I'm so pleased to have this one. It has it has really beautiful illustrations in it, and it's one of my favourite Jane Austens. I'm not going to give you a plot summary because I feel like most people know what it's about, but yeah, super excited to have a lovely edition. The rest are all a little bit random, because that's the nature of the Book Barn. So I also picked up this really nice edition of Wagner's Ring by M. Owen Lee. I don't know if you can see that spine. It's essentially just like about Wagner's Ring cycle, which is like an opera, which I am familiar with musically but have never seen. And I just thought it sounded really intriguing, so I picked it up. That's going to be a recurring theme. I got this really sweet edition of Stories from Andersen, which is just a collection of fairy tales, but this is a lovely edition. It has these like colour illustrations and all of these. It is obviously a bit old, so I'm going to have to be very gentle with it, but I think it is extremely sweet. I also got this lovely edition of The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. I have read this when I was a child. I don't really remember it. I think this is a really lovely cover, and again, you pay by weight, so I just pick things up with enthusiasm and then I go to the till. I got a lot of classics, so I got Ian Forster, The Longest Journey. I don't really know much about this one, but Anna Marie at Actual Spinster has been reading a lot of E.M. Forster, and she specifically really likes these editions, so when I spotted it, I was like, hello. So I've been meaning to explore his work because of her enthusiasm. She did a whole video talking about ranking his books, which I will leave below. I can't remember at what place this one ranked, or if it was one that she liked, but I saw it, and I thought of her, and I picked it up. I also went for 2 Alexandre Dumas books. So I went for The Three Musketeers and The Man in the Iron Mask. The Three Musketeers, I know that Cara at Wild Book Garden really hated this. So there is a chance I might too, because a lot of the things she was saying I thought were extremely fair. But I really liked The Count of Monte Cristo, so I wanted to read more Alexandre Dumas. And The Three Musketeers is extremely famous, as is The Man in the Iron Mask. So I thought we could have a Dumas exploration in 2022. I also picked up Myths from Mesopotamia, Creation, the Flood, Gilgamesh and Others, a new translation by Stephanie Daly. I've been wanting to read Gilgamesh for ages, so I thought this sounded like a fun way of doing that and some other Mesopotamian myths. And then my final classic style novel is Spring Snow by Yukio Mishima. I've been wanting to explore more classics from other places that I've not read a lot of classics from. My understanding is this is Tokyo, 1912. The closed world of the ancient aristocracy is being breached for the first time by outsiders. We're following a character who's been raised among an elegant family, of the waning aristocracy, but then he has a romance with this girl. I don't really know, but I thought it sounded interesting. Also from the book farm, I got Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. This is a really classic piece of fantasy. I know a lot of people who like fantasy love Robin Hobb. I've never read any of her books. I thought I would change this. My understanding is that we follow a bastard son called Fitz, who returns to the royal family and then is training to be an assassin. Presumably he's the assassin's apprentice. I don't know, but Elderling Along happened at some point in the past, and I watched from the distance and thought to myself, gotta get on that soon. I also picked up The Diviners by Leva Bray, which I've been wanting to read for ages. I know that this is set in the 1920s, with a lot of flappers and jazz, but also some kind of fantasy, bright lights are hiding dark secrets. I'm intrigued. And then my final book from the book barn was The Unwomanly Face of War by Svetlana Alexievich, which is on my radar because of, for some reason, when I went to either Munich or Austria, some museum I was in, something about it talked about her, and this sounded really interesting, so I thought I would pick it up. Don't remember why. It does have little fish stuck to it. Yes, it does. Yeah, so she is a journalist from the Soviet Union, and essentially she spent a lot of time interviewing women from the Soviet Union from their experience of the war and that kind of thing, and that's what this is, and I thought that sounded intriguing. Now we move on to a random assortment of books that I just bought myself. This is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. I have already read this. I got this for free because if you use National Book Tokens, if you set up a Caboodle account, you can collect points, and when you get a certain number of points, you get to pick a free book from a selection of books, and I picked this because I have been wanting to reread it for ages. It is kind of set in this Regency Society magical world. It's a bit of a doorstopper. People tend to either love it or hate it. I'm in the love it camp, and I'm excited to do a reread. I also got Whose Body by Dorothy L. Sayers, which is the first of the Lord Peter Wimsey mystery novels. Essentially, I read Lucy Worsley's A Very British Murder for Nonfiction for November. I will leave my link to my review to that down below. Did I actually remember to talk about the book in that review? I don't think I did. Fuck. Maybe I won't. But she talked a lot about crime fiction in that, and she talked about this, and I have been enjoying exploring more golden age of crime novels. I also picked up The Children of Jocasta by Natalie Haynes, which is following women from the myths of Oedipus and Antigone. Essentially, I read Pandora's Jar for Nonfiction November, adored it, 5-star novel. It's made me want to read everything that Natalie Haynes has ever written, so I'm back on my Greek myth retelling wagon. I also picked up 1,000 Ships on Kindle, which is her Trojan War retelling, because now I want to read everything she's ever written. Speaking of retellings, this is A Clash of Steel, which is by C.B. Lee, which is a Treasure Island remix, and I really like Treasure Island. It's one of the classics that I just enjoy. I like pirates, and I thought that this sounded cool. I think that this is inspired by Qingxi and her fleet. Could be wrong. It's definitely following the Dragon Fleet on the South China Sea and that kind of thing, so extremely excited. A book that I've already mentioned in a video, which was my lowest rated books on my TBR video, is This Brutal House by Niven Govindan, which is, it's told in a collective from by these house mothers from New York. It's just exploring the Vogue ball community and that kind of thing. I think it sounds intriguing, although potentially challenging. Then we have The Woman Warrior by Maxine Hong Kingston. I kind of picked this up because my friend Mark read it and I saw that he really liked it, and I've been exploring more like Chinese writing recently. I know that this is also regarded as like a feminist classic, and it's kind of looking at Maxine Hong Kingston's when she was growing up, her mother's tales of what China is like and that kind of thing. I don't really know much more about it, but gonna give it a crack. Also, In the Watchful City by S.Q. Liu, which just sounds fabulous and delightfully queer. Anima, I'm just going to read you the back because I can't describe it better than it describes itself. Anima is an extrasensory human tasked with surveilling and protecting Aura's citizens via a complex living network called the Gleaming. Although Air World is restricted to what A can see and experience through the Gleaming, Anima takes pride and comfort in keeping Aura safe from harm. A mysterious outsider enters the city, carrying a cabinet of curiosities from around the world with a story attached to each item. And this is described essentially as a multifaceted story of borders, power, diaspora, and transformation. And I think it sounds so exciting. Final three physical books. We have The Nightingales Are Drunk by Hafez, which is just a poetry collection by this very famous Persian poet, who I have read a few small snippets of before, and I'm excited to just like dive in a little bit further. I have two non-fiction books. So I have No Time to Spare by Ursula K. Le Guin, which is thinking about what matters. At this point, I will read everything that Ursula K. Le Guin writes, but I know that this one has been is particularly powerful and very affecting because she wrote it towards the end of her life. And then also Sugar and Slate by Charlotte Williams, which is on my radar because of, I think, Shan at the story time. I could be wrong. This came up during Deweython, which is a readathon based around reading Welsh writers. And so this follows a mixed-race young woman, the daughter of a white Welsh-speaking mother and a black father from Guyana, grows up in a small town on the coast of North Wales. Don't know why I put this as non-fiction, because it is fiction, but it's exploring Welshness and identity and that kind of thing. And I'm probably going to save it for Deweython this year. Finally, just to end on a couple of books that I bought on Kindle, I will run through these very briefly. So, The School for Good and Evil by Saman Chainani, which I have actually wrapped up in my Christmas reading wrap-up, so I won't tell you much about it, I'll just link that down below. The Box in the Woods by Maureen Johnson, which is the fourth book in the Truly Devious series, but it's technically a standalone because our main character Stevie is invited to a summer camp where there was like a murder in the 70s and she's trying to solve it. Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby, which is on my radar because of Bow Ties and Books, because they really rated this. A black father, a white father, two murdered sons, a quest for vengeance. I gather it's like a bit gritty and dark, but they said it was amazing, so I went for it. The Night Watchman by Louise Erdrich, which I gather is based on her grandfather's life as a night watchman, and I believe it's exploring like the ramifications of the Emancipation Bill from the 50s. Again, Louise Erdrich, I have the Roundhouse by her in my TBR trolley, and she's an author that I want to explore further, so I picked it up. Cryer's War by Nina Varela, which is a sapphic love story. I think it's like a sci-fi. I think one of them's like an automaton. Ayla, a human servant rising the ranks of the House of Sovereign, dreams of avenging the death of her family by killing the Sovereign's daughter, Lady Cryer. I'm gonna expect that it's gonna get a little bit more complex than that. And then finally, Girl Serpent Thorn by Melissa Bashar-Doost, which is like a fairy tale. Again, it's sapphic. It's about a girl cursed to be poisonous to the touch and who discovers what power might lie in such a curse. Again, sounds interesting. That's everything. It's probably even a bit of a long one. I would really love to hear if you've read any of these. If you have thoughts on any of these, please do leave a comment down below, or let me know what you got for Christmas that you particularly enjoyed. I hope that you are having a lovely day. I will see you next time for something different.